Watch the feet. Every woman dancing here lives in a country where a man can legally marry more than one wife. And when you ask them about it, you may not get the answer you expect. The women we spoke to were not uncomfortable talking about it. They were proud of it. It's culture, one of them said. Another told us she does not feel jealous when her husband brings home a second wife. She sits down and talks with the new woman. In her experience, she said, the two of them can end up friends.
Got your husband, and then the husband can come to you as your first wife and tell you, oh,
you are welcome to visit.
But a man here cannot simply propose. Before a marriage is agreed, his family has to hand cows to her family. Not as a gift. The cows are the agreement. We asked this young woman what her own family would ask for. Her answer is a number of cows. Before she says it, put your guess in the comments. How many? This is Eswatini, a country smaller than New Jersey. You can drive across the whole thing in about 3 hours.
Identify areas of cooperation. We are here to...
And this is where Africa's last absolute king still rules. He appoints the prime minister. He appoints 20 of the country's 30 senators. Political parties do not run in elections here at all. Every candidate stands as an individual. His father took that same throne as a 4-month-old baby before the Wright brothers ever left the ground, and held it for 82 years. The longest verified reign of any monarch in recorded history. Every August, tens of thousands of young women walk to a single place carrying cut reeds and dance in front of that throne. They are not carrying them to the king. We will get to who they are carrying them to. An hour from the capital, white rhinos walk up to a waterhole close enough that people photograph them from a car window, and rangers here will take you in on foot. One more thing sits underneath all of it. Most Swazi families hold no title deed to the ground their house stands on. They are not squatters. They are not renting. They can farm it, build on it, pass it to their children. What they cannot do is sell it. Most of the land in this country is not for sale and never has been. Which means somebody else decided that family could live there. By the end of this, you will know who. Subscribe, and let's find out. 125 miles from the top of this country to the bottom. You can drive the length of it in about 3 hours. Cool green mountain and pine forest in the west where the capital sits. Sugarcane through the middle. Dry thorn and savanna in the east, big game country summers past 100 degrees. Two things about this place that will not match the picture in your head. There is almost no light pollution here. On a clear winter night, the Milky Way comes out over the high veld the way it does over a desert. And it snows on the capital. Not often. 3 times since 1900, in a country that sits about as far from the equator as Florida. About 1.2 million people live here. They call themselves Eswatini. The two cities are nothing alike. Mbabane is the capital, quiet up in the hills. Manzini is louder, and it is where the country does its business. A woman on the street in Manzini told us what she likes most about living here. It is peaceful, she said, and it is safe. In both of those cities, you can buy land. There is a deed, an office that registers it, and a buyer when you want out. Roughly the way it works in Ohio. But outside the cities, most of the land runs on a completely different system. King Mswati III took the throne in 1986 at 18 years old. He appoints the Prime Minister. He appoints 20 of the country's 30 senators. Candidates for parliament cannot run under a political party. Every one of them stands as an individual. On the 19th of April 2018, at a packed stadium in Manzini for the 50th anniversary of independence, he told the crowd the country was going back to its old name. From that afternoon, Swaziland was Eswatini. It went to the High Court. The challenge was not about the name. It was that nobody had been asked. But renaming a country is the part of that power you can see from the road. Most of the land outside the cities is Swazi Nation Land. The government does not hold it as ordinary state property, and the families farming it hold no title deed to it. It is held in trust for the Swazi nation by the king. He is not the one who walks out to a hillside and decides that this family gets this field. That happens much closer to the ground. chief does not simply hand a family a piece of land either. There is a process, and it begins with something almost every rural family in this country still keeps behind the house. Look at the middle of this homestead. The houses stand in a ring, and inside that ring, there is an enclosure made of branches. That is where the cattle are, not off at the edge of the property, the center of it. We asked a 19-year-old in Manzini what he owns. 40 cattle at his family's place. A good one, he said, will fetch about 15,000 rand. Call it $900.
So you can marry even one?
I can marry even one.
So one girl, how many?
He is not married. He told us he wants 4 wives eventually, and he said it the way you would tell someone your college plans. Before any of that can happen, his family has to hand cattle to hers. That is lobola. Nobody is buying a person. It is an agreement between 2 families, and the size of it is negotiated.
But in Western world,
We asked him how a young man is supposed to come up with that many animals. His answer came without a pause. You buy them, or you wait for your sister. The cattle that come in when she marries are the cattle that go out when he does. In the system, he described the herd behind the house is never still. It leaves when a son marries. It comes back when a daughter does. So there is a number, and it is different every time. We asked a young woman on the same street what her family would expect for her.
As for me, 25 cows.
Oh.
Because I'm a Dlamini.
She did not hesitate. $25. There are more women than men in this country. Not by much overall, about 51 to 49. But the gap opens up with age. Men here die about 4 years younger than women. Among people over 65, there are roughly 2 women for every man. One woman told us she does not feel jealous when her husband brings home a second wife. She sits down and talks with her, and in her experience, the 2 of them can end up friends. It's culture, another said, and she was proud of saying it.
Then you ask for the woman, you sit down with the woman, you know the woman, then at the end of the day.
It's culture then.
The cattle are not only for marriage, they give milk, and most of it becomes soured in a dried gourd. Their hides go into the clothing worn at ceremonies. And when one is slaughtered, It is usually for a wedding, a funeral, or a ceremony for the ancestors. But mostly, that pen in the middle of the yard is where the family's savings sit, where everyone can see them, where they can be counted. Think about what that means. An American family keeps its savings somewhere it never has to look at. Here the savings are standing in the yard, and they have to be fed every morning. Because that is the catch. A cow eats every day, and it needs somewhere to stand, which means all of this rests on land. And that land is not for sale. Cattle are savings. So what does a family actually eat? Start with what the cows give. Milk goes into a dried gourd and sits until it sours. That is amasi, and it goes alongside all kinds of food here. The closest American comparison is plain Greek yogurt, thinner and sharper. The staple is sishwala, maize meal cooked stiff enough to hold its shape on the plate. No fork. You take a piece with your right hand, press a dent into it, and use that to pick up what is beside it. What is beside it is usually greens, and one of the most common is a plant a lot of Americans have paid money for without knowing it. Amaranth. In the United States, it sits in health food aisles as a superfood grain. Here, people call it imbuya and eat the leaves, and a market seller, describing his stock, called those greens weeds. Good weeds. Add pumpkin cooked down and stirred into the maize. Add chicken. And around Manzini, there are pans of hot oil on the pavement, turning out fat cakes, fried dough, no sugar, no hole, a donut with the sweetness taken out and the substance left in. They cost small change, and people eat them, standing up on the way to work. Some of it is bought at the market, but a lot of it starts on the ground behind the house. The maize grows there, the pumpkin grows there, the greens come up there, the chickens and the cattle stand there. and that ground is land the family will never hold a deed to. And that is the question everything else sits on top of. How does a family get that ground in the first place? The answer starts with a man named Fumi Mamba. His father leads the clan out here east of the capital in an area he calls Mamba Kingdom. Ridge after ridge of grass and thorn, homesteads scattered so far apart you could drive past one without seeing it. There is a high school out here where students queue for a lunch the government pays for. There is one clinic for the whole Mamba area. This is Swazi Nation Land, and every family living on it arrived here somehow. The customary process is called kukonta. A man attaches himself to a chiefdom, and through it he receives the right to use land inside it. Build a house, plant a field, keep cattle. In practice, the family stays on that ground after him. There is a small customary fee. There is also an ongoing obligation called kulehla, which means labor given to the chief's household and his fields. The land is allocated through the chiefdom. It is not transferred to him as property. Families here hold no title deed to their plots, and there is no uniform written record of who was given what. Amnesty International documented more than 200 people, most of them subsistence farmers who lost their homes and their fields with no compensation. The people evicted said they had come by that land the proper way, through kukonta. Fumi described talking about the king as walking on eggshells. In this culture, he told us once, the king has said something, it cannot be reversed, and nobody wants to be caught having said the wrong thing. So if land is allocated through the chiefdom, one question matters more than all the others. Who chooses the chief? Chiefs are not elected. A family council puts forward a name, and the king appoints him. And the constitution allows the king to appoint any person as chief over any area.
Identify areas of cooperation. We are here to look at the opportunities. We We are approved. We are approved.
Section 233 puts it in one line. Chiefs are the footstool of the king, and the king rules through the chiefs. So the chief decides who gets what inside his chiefdom, and the king appoints the chief. One more piece. Under customary practice, these rights are strongest for male heads of household. Hold on to that, because in a great many of these homesteads, the head of the family is not a man. In a valley south of the capital, there is a homestead built entirely out of grass. Domed huts woven from thatch and rope, a fence of branches, a pen in the middle. The guide walking us through it said the thing you would not expect. Nobody lives in this one. He grew up in a house like it, but that was years ago, and the homesteads people build now go up in brick. This village was put here, so visitors could see how the old arrangement worked. Twice a day, a dance is performed here for whoever has come to watch. 15 or so people, bare feet on packed earth seed rattles at every ankle, and a stamp that comes down hard enough that you feel the ground take it. Everyone doing it knows it is a performance. The arrangement is not. Start at the gate. The unmarried young men sleep closest to the entrance. Boys move out to that side around 6 years old. The girls' huts are toward the front as well. The guide's explanation for that is hard to sit with. If raiders came, he said the girls were the ones the raiders would see first, and that was the point. They were there to hold attention while the men of the family got ready. Every doorway is low enough that a grown man goes in bent double head, first one at a time. That is deliberate too, the guide said. Anyone coming through a door he has no business coming through arrives blind, with the back of his head exposed. The cattle sit in the middle, ringed by the entire family. And at the top end of the homestead above all of it is the grandmother's house. That is where the family speaks to its ancestors. Sit down inside, and you do not sit anywhere you like. Men to the right, women to the left. The layout is not random. It is a map of who is who. And look where the map points. Rights to the land are strongest for the male head of the household. We spent a whole chapter on that.
Okay, so now let's get inside the grandmother's house.
But the homestead is not built facing him. It is built facing uphill toward the grandmother's house, where the family goes to speak to the dead. People here stopped building in grass a long time ago. They did not stop building in that shape. Nobody buys groceries with a cow. So on a weekday morning, Manzini fills up. Under the awnings, tomatoes and pumpkin and cocoyam and potatoes live chickens, piles of greens with names that do not translate cleanly in Buya, and the slippery ones that thicken a stew. Everything here costs less than the same thing in the mall, and everybody knows it, which is why the mall is quieter. Then you reach a row that is not selling food. Bark, roots, dried pieces of wood, small bags of soil. The seller can tell you which one you boil and drink for a bad stomach, and which one is for something else. This is traditional medicine, and it is not hidden away. It has a stall in the middle of the market with people waiting at it. Around 9 in 10 people in this country are Christian. A great many of them use both. And then there is the section that should stop an American cold. Racks of second-hand clothing, not knockoffs, the actual garments with American names still printed across the front of them. Everyone made the same trip, collected somewhere in the United States, sorted, baled, shipped across an ocean, and hung on a rail here with a price on it. Used clothing is a real export business, and this is one of the places it lands. Something else that surprises people who come here. You can drink the water straight out of the tap. One visitor who spent weeks driving the country said he barely saw a mosquito the whole time. That is what comes in. Here is what goes out. Near Manzini, there is a factory that makes concentrate for Coca-Cola. Not the bottles, the syrup. It ships to bottlers in more than 20 African countries. For years, that one plant accounted for somewhere between a fifth and a third of this entire country's economy. Soft drink concentrate is the biggest thing Eswatini sells to the world, bigger than its sugar. So here is the picture. A kingdom of 1.2 million people that most Americans could not place on a map, wearing America's hand-me-downs on the way to work. And quietly mixing the flavor of a continent's Coca-Cola. That is the modern half of this country, and it runs on cash. The other half never did, and it is about to be tested harder than anything in this film so far. There is a homestead out in the Mamba area where a family let us in for a while. Not a rebuilt one, a working one. Children home from school, corn spread out drying in the sun. The person who runs it is the grandmother. To understand why, you have to look at what came through this country starting in the 1990s. Eswatini has the highest adult HIV rate in the world. Around 1 in 4 people between 15 and 49 is living with it. At the peak, life expectancy collapsed. By 1999, roughly 112,000 children here were orphaned or vulnerable. About 7 in 10 of them had lost their parents to AIDS. There is no orphanage system on Earth built for that. Not here, not anywhere. So it did not go to an institution. It went to the homesteads. Children were taken in by aunts, by uncles, and above all, by grandmothers. In one southern region, more than half of all homesteads were caring for at least one orphan. Rights to that ground are strongest for the male head of the household. And in homestead after homestead, there was no longer a male head of the household. The house that everything is arranged around, the one at the top end of the yard, is the grandmother's. That was always where it stood. it stopped being symbolic. It also stretched past what it could carry. Households ended up with more children than food. Some ended up with no adult at all, run by the oldest child in the house. But the story did not stop at the worst of it. Eswatini had one of the world's worst HIV epidemics, and it became the first country to hit the United Nations targets for controlling it. New infections fell by roughly 3/4 in a decade. Nobody in that yard mentioned any of it to us. The corn was drying. The kids were home. The grandmother saw us out. An hour east of there is something else this country came very close to losing. East of the capital, the country dries out into thorn and flat-topped acacia. This is the Low Veld, and this is Helene. (22,000 hectares, about 85 square miles. The largest protected area in the country. Helene is the Siswati word for wilderness. Go to the waterhole early. Zebra, hippo, warthogs coming down in single file. And then a white rhino comes out of the scrub near the vehicle with a calf behind her. Not across a valley, not behind glass. Close enough that people film her from the car window without zooming in. Rangers here will also take small groups in on foot to track them. That is worth stopping on, because there was a stretch when none of this was going to survive. Between 1988 and 1992, this country fought what the people who were in it call the Rhino War. Poaching syndicates worked the reserves, and Eswatini lost most of its rhinos. A rhino horn is keratin, the same protein as your fingernails. On the black market, it has sold for more per ounce than gold, on a claim about medicine that no laboratory has ever supported. One ranger, Petros Ngomane, got inside a horn syndicate. Somebody threw a petrol bomb through his window while he slept. The rhinos came back. Men like him were part of the reason. Now think about how this park exists at all. Nobody bought it. Nobody voted on it. In 1967, King Sobhuza II declared that this ground was now a national park, and it was. "51 years later from that same throne, his son told a stadium the country had a new name. That office has been used to remove farming families from land with no compensation. It also put protection around the country's rhinos. Both of those came from the same chair. On a Sunday morning in Manzini, something happens to the color of the streets. Blue and white, everywhere. A visitor filming here could not work out what he was looking at. He kept asking whether it was a church thing or a school thing. It is a church thing. Around 9 in 10 people in this country are Christian. That part will not surprise anybody. What surprises people is which churches. The largest single group belongs to a movement that started in southern Africa, founded and led by Africans, not brought in by missionaries from Europe. The English name it usually gets is African Zionism, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the political movement Americans associate with that word. Different history, different continent, same unfortunate translation. Its congregations meet outdoors as often as indoors, in fields on hillsides by rivers. They heal by prayer, and they drum. That market stall selling bark and roots is not a contradiction here. And this is the same country that had a young woman named Lungile Zwane walk onto a stage at Coachella in 2023, the first Amapiano artist ever to play it. Beyoncé used her track on a world tour. She was born here, population 1.2 million. Every year, on the last weekend of May, there is a music festival in a valley outside the capital. It has been running since 2007. None of this is the past hanging on. The cattle are still standing in the middle of the yard, and the same country produced the biggest name in an entire genre of music. So the question from the very beginning is still sitting there. If a family here owns none of it and can sell none of it, what exactly do they have? A family here holds no deed. They cannot sell. They cannot borrow against it. A chief allocated the ground, and in documented cases, people were later removed from it with nothing. So it would be easy to say they own nothing. Except that is not what happened when this country was tested. 112,000 children orphaned or made vulnerable, a quarter of the children in the kingdom, in a nation of 1.2 million people. There was no system standing by for that. No orphanage network, no foster infrastructure, nothing at that scale. They went to homesteads, to aunts, to uncles, and above all to grandmothers in a house at the top of a yard that had stood in that spot for as long as anyone could name. That house was not a thing anyone could sell when times got bad, and that mattered in a decade when a generation of parents did not come home. In America, a house is something you own. It is also something you can lose. Missed payments, a foreclosure, a signature on the wrong line. Here it runs the other way. The ground has real value, but it is not a commodity the family can cash out, and it is not a commodity anybody can offer them money for. So this is what a family here actually has. Not an asset they can sell, a place they belong to. It is a bad system if you are trying to build wealth. It is a bad system if you are a widow, because those rights are strongest for male heads of household. It is a bad system if a chief decides he wants your field and there is no deed anywhere to argue with. And those homesteads were still standing when 100,000 children needed somewhere to go. Both of those are true at the same time in the same country. dance you saw at the start is put on for visitors twice a day. Everyone doing it knows that. The cattle in the middle of the yard are not a farm. They are a savings account that has to be fed every morning.
You look like one of them basketball fighters.
But in Western world, we call it ranks.
The 19-year-old wants 4 wives, and cattle will be part of the price of every one of them. The young woman said, 25. If you guessed in the comments, that is the number. The land those cattle stand on was not bought. It was allocated through a chief, and that chief was appointed by a king. The grandmother's house sits at the top of the yard, and in a great many homesteads, she is the one running it. And the rhinos at the waterhole are alive because a king decided in 1967 that Helene would be protected. None of it is a museum. There is a factory here mixing Coca-Cola concentrate for more than 20 African countries, a music festival in a valley every May, and a woman from this kingdom who walked onto the stage at Coachella. But there is one thing, sitting in the middle of Mababan, that we have not explained. A bronze statue of a woman. People pass her every day on a street that carries her name. She was Queen Regent of this country for 22 years. And that is the part nobody tells you about Eswatini. There are 2 thrones here. We will show you the second one next time. Somewhere in this country right now, tens of thousands of young women are walking in the same direction. Most of them are teenagers. Some have come from the other side of the kingdom. They are carrying machetes. What they have come to cut are reeds, tall ones out of the wetlands. They tie them into bundles as high as they are, lift them, and carry them back. And at the end of it, in beaded skirts with rattles on every ankle, they dance in front of a throne. Not the kings. This is Eswatini, and this kingdom has 2 thrones. The one those reeds are going to belongs to somebody else entirely. By the end of this, you will know who and why a country would build itself that way. The last king to sit on the other one ruled for 82 years. the longest precisely documented reign of any monarch on record. He was still on that throne when Reagan was in the White House. He had around 70 wives and 210 children. The cars he drove are lined up in a museum in the Royal Valley. That is not a family. That is an institution, and it is still running. "48,000 years ago, people were cutting into a hillside in the north of this country to take one thing out of the ground. Not metal, color. And there is a stack of paper from the 1880s in which this country was signed away, nearly all of it, by its own king. They spent the next 100 years buying it back, and much of it was paid for in cattle. All of it comes back to one question, and that is the question this film answers. In a kingdom where one man appoints the prime minister, 20 of the 30 senators, and the chiefs who hand out the land, who is actually sitting at the top. Hit subscribe and stay with us. It is not the man you are expecting. The reeds go to the Queen Mother. Not the King's wife, the other royal office. She holds a title of her own here, in Luvukati, the she-elephant. He is Ngwenyama, the lion. Stand in front of the national coat of arms, and both animals are on it. A lion on one side, an elephant on the other, holding up the same shield, not one above the other, side by side, carrying the same weight. A guide at the Royal Museum explained the lion. Traditionally, before a man took the throne, he was supposed to kill one. The strength of the animal was believed to enter him. He did not explain the elephant. Nobody needs it explained here. Because this country does not have a king and a first lady. The Queen Mother is a royal office of her own. She has her own royal residence. And more than once in this country's history, she has been regent running the kingdom when there was no adult king to run it. Which is why tens of thousands of young women cut reeds and bring them to her residence instead of his. Now put that beside something familiar. Americans grew up inside a system designed around the idea that power should not sit entirely in one pair of hands. Vice presidents, courts, a Congress, a written constitution. This kingdom went at the same problem from a completely different direction. It put the second seat inside the royal family. There is a part of royal life here that travel films leave out, and we are not leaving it out. The king takes wives, not by obligation and not on any schedule, but he does, and it is the most argued about thing about this monarchy, both inside Eswatini and outside it. We are not going to settle that for you. What matters here is that the second seat has actually been used. Twice in the last 125 years, a king has died and a woman has held this country until there was a new one ready to hold it. The first of those two times, the king did not die in a palace or in a bed. He died on his feet, in the middle of a ceremony. South of Mbabane, the road drops into a valley. This is Lubamba. Mbabane is the administrative capital. This place is the royal and legislative one. The distinction is written into the map. There are cattle in the fields on the way in. The valley around it has a name, Eswatini. It means the Valley of Heaven. There is a wildlife sanctuary inside it, where zebra and antelope graze beside the walking trails. And at the end of the valley is a mountain that people call Execution Rock. The story attached to it is that men condemned under the old order were taken to the top. Valley of Heaven at one end, that at the other. What is in this valley is the Parliament building, the National Cathedral where the country holds its national prayers, the National Stadium, the royal residences, and the King's office. You feel the difference at the door. You cannot walk into the king's office wearing trousers. Men put a wrap on over their clothes at the entrance before going inside. The man filming had to stop and change. There is something else about this family that surprises people. They are educated overseas. Royal children go abroad for school, primary and secondary both. Hold on to that. It matters later, And the reason it started is not what you would guess. King Mswati III has around 16 wives. One of them is the daughter of Jacob Zuma, the former president of South Africa. A kingdom of 1.2 million people sitting inside a country of 63 million, and that is where the royal family is marrying. This is not a museum with a crown on display. It is an institution that is still making alliances, still sending its children abroad, and still asking you to change your clothes at the door. And half an hour away in the Malkerns Valley, the last weekend of every May belongs to something else entirely. Both of those are this country at the same time. This year, last weekend of May in the Malkerns Valley, there is a venue called House on Fire. Mosaic walls, carved stone faces, sculpture built into the structure, fire pits. It looks like somebody handed Antoni Gaudi a commission in southern Africa and let him finish it. For 3 days, people come here from all over the world. And the act that opens Friday night is a Sibhaka troupe, the stomping dance bare feet from the cultural village down the road. They go on first. The international lineup comes after them. Not a heritage segment before the real show, the start of it. And it is not only a music festival. There are craft markets running alongside the stage's workshops, poetry theatre. Which is worth stopping on, because the things being sold at those stalls are the same things this country sells to the rest of the world. There is a glassworks at Ngwenya, opened in 1979, where the raw material is 100% recycled bottles. Somebody's empty goes into the furnace and comes out as an elephant, or a bowl, or a goblet. Those pieces have been sold through museum shops in the United States. There is a cooperative of Swazi women who weave baskets out of wild vetiver grass, and those baskets are exported. And every February and March, a golden fruit drops off the national tree. People here ferment it into baganu, and the country holds a festival for it that both the king and the queen mother attend. The story everybody tells about that fruit is that elephants eat the fallen ones and get drunk on them. Researchers who did the arithmetic worked out that an elephant would have to eat far more fermented fruit than it could physically manage. The story did not care. It survived anyway, and it survived so well that it ended up on a label. If you have ever walked past the liqueur shelf at Costco, you have seen this fruit. That bottle with the elephant on the front of it. Same fruit, same tree. It just took a detour through South Africa on the way to you. So this kingdom sends out glass made from garbage baskets, made from grass, and a liqueur made from fruit that falls on the ground. Everything on that list starts in the dirt here. And people have been taking things out of this dirt for a very, very long time. Northwest, near the South African border, there is a mountain the locals named after a crocodile because of its shape. Ngwenya, the second highest in the country. On its southern flank, there is a hole in the hillside. That is it. That is the whole thing. A modest opening in a slope easy to walk past with a good view. It is called Lion Cavern, and it is the oldest known evidence of people mining ochre on a large scale anywhere on the planet. A study published in Nature Communications in 2024 dated the digging there to around 48,000 years ago. Sit with that for a second. The pyramids are about 4,500 years old. This hole is more than 10 times older. What was worth that much work? Not gold, not iron, not anything you could make a tool out of. Hematite. They were digging out iron oxide and grinding it into red ochre. Pigment. They were cutting into a mountain to get a color. They used it on their skin. They used it in ceremonies, and they carried it a long way from that mountain. Before we knew how to farm, we knew how to paint ourselves. There is a story attached to the site. The people who tell it say the old miners believed a great horned snake lived at the heart of that mountain, and that is why they worked the summit and left the rest of it alone. And here is where it turns. In the 1960s, the same hill was opened up again. Not for pigment this time, for iron ore on an industrial scale shipped abroad. The country's railway was built to carry it out. "48,000 years apart, two sets of people cut into the same mountain. The first ones wanted color, the second ones wanted revenue. That is a country in one hillside. Because the question that has never gone away here is not what is in the ground. It is who gets to decide what happens to it. September 6, 1968. Britain hands the country back. Sobhuza II, who had been on the throne since he was 4 months old, is now king of an independent Swaziland with a written constitution, a parliament, and political parties. 5 years later, he repealed it. April 12, 1973. The constitution was suspended. Political parties were banned. The king assumed supreme power. The man who spent his life getting the country back from Britain is the same man who took its constitution away from it. The ban on party politics began there. The constitution written in 2005 did not restore party-based elections. Now that is the system. It is not the morning. An Australian who spent a month here said what surprised him was how ordinary it all felt. His guide drove him up into what she called one of the roughest neighborhoods in the capital, and then had him get out and film a local football game to make the point. That same guide told him primary school here is free and that because of it, almost everybody will understand you in English. A woman we stopped in Manzini said what she likes most about home is that it is peaceful. She said it twice. And then the other part, in 2021, people took to the streets, asking for democratic reform. The unrest that followed left many people dead. The numbers are still argued over. Then there is the lawyer. Thulani Masiko was a human rights attorney. When the king announced from a stadium that Swaziland was now Eswatini Maseko, went to the High Court and argued the decision had been taken without asking anybody. In January 2023, he was shot dead at his own home. Nobody has been convicted. We asked people about the politics. A man named Fumi told us that for him, talking about the king is like walking on eggshells. In this culture, he said, once the king has said something, it cannot be reversed, and nobody wants to be caught having said the wrong thing.
Which is why when you ask people about the name change in Eswatini, we don't know what to say. We don't want to be caught in a situation where we have been rude.
The people who did talk were quick to point to things the king has done for the country. So here is where we are. The second throne is real. The ceremonies are real. And in 1973, the Constitution was taken off the table. Which brings us to the man who signed that decree. Because he is buried in a cave in a mountain, and where they pointed him is the strangest thing in this entire story. At the Royal Museum in Lobamba, there is a line of cars. Not carriages, cars, the ones he actually drove. One of them has a shape at the back that looks almost like wings, and he gave it a name that means the big bed. There is also a glass house. That is where his body lay after he died, so people could come and see him through the glass. Sobhuza II was made king at 4 months old. He took full power at 22. He died at 83 in 1982. 70 wives, 210 children. By the time he died, more than 1,000 grandchildren. He converted to Christianity and kept the old ceremonies. He led the country to independence and then took its constitution away. This is the part the guide points out. The burial was oriented deliberately facing east. That direction points toward Mozambique, where the royal house came from. And from the memorial, you can see one particular mountain in the distance. There is somebody in that one. The man in that mountain is his father. He was 23 years old when he died, and Sobhuza was 4 months old. How it happened is the thing this entire film has been walking toward. There are 2 street names in Mbaban that nobody stops to read. One of them is Mahlakola. One of them is Guamil. People park on both of them every day. Both of them are named after somebody in this story. The first one was a king. His name was Nwan V. Everybody called him Bunu. He took the throne as a teenager in a country that was being carved up around him. In December of 1899, he was at the Nkwala. Nkwala is the most important ceremony in the Swazi year, the kingship ceremony. It runs for days, it centers on the king himself, and parts of it are closed. You do not photograph it, and you do not attend it casually. He was dancing. And in the middle of it, at 23 years old, he collapsed and died. Some accounts say poison. Nothing was ever proven. Then they had a problem. The heir was a boy who had been born that July, 4 months old. Under Swazi custom, the throne could not simply sit empty, so the country went into a regency. It went to his grandmother. Her name was Labotsibeni. People called her Guamile. She was regent for the next 22 years. The second street, and the bronze woman standing at the center of the capital. Now, everything you have watched so far has been leading here. Because of what she did with those 22 years. To understand what she inherited, you have to go back one more generation. In the 1880s, her husband was king. His name was Mbanzeni. Europeans came to his court wanting concessions, grazing, mining, timber, trading rights. He granted them one after another, and by the end of that decade, concessions covered much of the country. Some of them overlapped. The same ground had been promised twice. It got tangled enough that the British eventually set up a commission just to work out who had been given what. Mbanzini died in 1889. Then Britain settled it on its own terms. A proclamation in 1907 set aside about a third of the land for Swazi occupation. The other 2/3 became Crown and concession land. Some Swazis were now tenants on ground their families had farmed for generations. That is the country Gwamale was handed. She did two things. The first was fiercely opposed by the chiefs. In 1915, she sent the boy King abroad to a mission school in South Africa along with 8 other young men. There is an old Swazi prophecy about a white man arriving with a book in one hand and money in the other. The advice attached to the story was simple: take the book, refuse the money. Her husband's generation had taken the money. She took the book. The second thing she did was start a fund to buy the land back. It was raised from the people, wages and cattle. She died in 1925. The following April, the grandson she had sent to school stood before the Privy Council in London and argued the concessions were invalid. He lost. And then they started buying. Farm by farm. It took the rest of his reign. Today, the majority of this country is held under Swazi Nation Land. Land that cannot be bought and cannot be sold by anybody. They lost the country on paper in the 1880s. They spent the next 100 years taking it back, and then they made sure it could never be sold again. Go back to the beginning of this. Tens of thousands of young women walking with reeds. They were not walking to the king. They were walking to the second throne, the one that has held this country twice when there was no adult man to hold it. The lion and the elephant on the coat of arms, holding up the same shield. A man at a doorway putting a wrap on over his trousers before he can go into a government office. A hillside where people cut into the rock 48,000 years ago, and what they came for was color. A line of cars behind a museum, a glass house, a king buried in a cave pointed east and pointed at one particular mountain. Two street names in the capital that nobody stops to read. And a fund raised in wages and cattle to buy back a country that had been signed away on paper. That is what a kingdom is when it is still working. not a crown in a display case. A woman who ran a country for 22 years and sent a boy to school against everybody's advice. A grandson who lost in London and started buying anyway. A throne that renamed a country in an afternoon. All of it in a place you can drive across in 3 hours. There is one more country we want to take you to, and it is nothing like this one. Go northeast past Mozambique, and there is a nation stretched along one enormous lake, long, thin, and green. They call it the warm heart of Africa. It has chiefs too. It has land that most families hold without owning. But almost everything else went the other way. In 1971, their leader's own party rewrote the constitution to make him president for life. 23 years later, at 96 years old, he stood in an election and lost. And across most of that country, when land passes down through a family, it does not pass to the sons, it passes to the daughters. The men go and farm their wives' fields. Same corner of Africa, opposite answer. That is next. A figure comes out of the dust wearing a carved wooden mask, and every person watching knows the rule. You do not ask who is inside it. The dance is called Gule Wamkulu. UNESCO put it on its list of the world's intangible cultural heritage. It is not a museum piece. It is still performed at initiations, at funerals, at the crowning of a chief. This is Malawi, a long, narrow country wrapped around one enormous lake, about the size of Pennsylvania. Landlocked, no oil, no coast. Outside the cities, darkness still arrives early. And the whole continent calls it the warm heart of Africa. Nobody says that about a rich country. That is what makes it worth explaining. Here is what you are about to see. A lake longer than Lake Michigan. Guinness recognizes it as the lake with more fish species than any other on Earth, and almost every one of them exists nowhere else. Boats coming back at dawn with the night's catch, and a market that forms on the sand around them before the sun is properly up. Villages where a household is not a mother and a father and their children. It is 15 or 20 people in a ring of houses around one swept courtyard. And in many communities here, when land passes down through a family, it does not go to the sons, it goes to the daughters. The husband is the one who moves. There is a man who was made president for life by his own party and then stood in an election in his 90s and lost. There is a boy who dropped out of school at 14 because his family could not pay the fees and built a working windmill out of a bicycle frame. And there is a plate of white cornmeal that tells you more about this country than any of it. Because everything here comes back to one question, and it is the question this film answers. When the rain decides whether your family eats and the land will not hold your future for you, what do you hold on to instead? Subscribe and come with us. Tell me in the comments what country you are watching from. The boats went out in the dark. At Chembe village on a sandbar, the maps call Cape Maclear. They are coming back now. Wooden hulls dragged up the beach. Men waist-deep in the water, hauling in nets, untangling them by hand, shaking the catch loose. The sand fills up before the sun is properly over the hills. Women arrive with basins. The fish gets sorted by size, spread out on racks, to dry weighed, argued over, and carried off to stalls up the path. There is no building. The market is the beach, and it exists for about 2 hours a day. Look at what they went out in. Some of these are dugout canoes cut from a single log, a design that has been used here for generations. And look at what they went out with. Oil lamps. In 1859, a Scottish explorer named David Livingstone stood on this shore at night and saw hundreds of small lights moving across black water. He wrote that it looked like a lake of stars. They were fishing boats. They still are. Now go inland at the same hour. Away from the water, a completely different morning is happening. Courtyards being swept with grass brooms. Women walking to the borehole with buckets on their heads, the queue already forming before the day gets hot. Children in school uniforms on a dirt road walking to school. Back at the beach. This is not a picturesque local custom. Around 60,000 people in this country fish for a living, and roughly 350,000 more make theirs from what happens to the fish afterwards. Drying it, carrying it, selling it, building the boats, mending the nets. Fish is the cheapest animal protein in Malawi, and for a great many families, it is the only meat that reaches the table. And the lake they pull it out of is not an ordinary lake. It is longer than Lake Michigan. It covers about a fifth of the entire country. Guinness recognizes it as the lake with more fish species than any other on Earth. At least 700 of them are cichlids, and all but 4 are found nowhere else. The small bright ones that live around the rocks are called mbuna. And then the part that does not make it onto the postcards. The fish everybody actually wants is called chambo, a large tilapia grilled whole with salt eaten with your hands. In the 1980s, boats were landing thousands of tons of it a year. By the end of the 90s, that had collapsed. What comes up in the nets now is mostly usipa, a sardine-sized fish, dried in the sun by the thousand. One study put the decline in fish stocks at up to 93% between 1990 and 2010. A fisherman named Spencer Condor, who had been doing this since the early 70s, said that back then you could catch loads of fish close to the shore, and schoolboys pulled them off the rocks with hooks. He said that is not the case anymore, and that paddling deep into the lake is no guarantee of coming back with anything. A trader at Senga Bay named Katrina Mail, a mother of 6, put the consequence more plainly. The fish are more expensive because they are scarce, and some children have stopped going to school because their parents cannot find the money. So this is the first thing to understand about living here. The lake feeds the country. It does not promise anybody anything. And when the boats come back, light, the shortfall does not land on one man. It lands on a household. And a household here is a much bigger thing than you are picturing. Drive out of any town here, and the houses stop coming one at a time. They come in rings, 6 or 8 small buildings of mud brick and thatch arranged around a bare courtyard that somebody sweeps every morning until the ground is smooth. That is one household, 15-20 people in it. Grandmother, her daughters, their husbands, the children, an aunt, a couple of cousins whose parents are working somewhere else. A child here may be fed by 4 or 5 different women and disciplined by any adult who happens to be watching. Now ask a simple question. Who does this place belong to? In a large part of this country, the answer is not the man standing in the middle of it. Malawi has 2 systems running side by side. In the Northland, passes through the fathers, the way it does in most of the world. But across the center and the south, in the communities that make up the majority of the population, it goes the other way entirely. The line runs through the mother, which means the daughters inherit the fields, not the sons. But the system has another side. A young man does not expect to inherit land from his own family. He expects access to land through his wife. So he moves. The word for a marriage, where the husband goes to live in the wife's village, is chikamwini. He arrives, and the wife's family shows him a spot to build the house and a piece of ground to farm. There is a word for him too, mkamwini. It is usually translated as the in-marrying man, and in the plainer version, a stranger. He is a stranger in the village, where his own children are growing up. And it holds all the way through. If the marriage ends, he leaves. If his wife dies, he leaves. Either way, the children stay, because they were never his lineage to begin with. They belong to their mothers, and they will be raised by her sisters. The man who speaks for a family in these communities is often not the father at all. It is the mother's brother. Now, do not romanticize this. A society where women hold the land is not automatically a society where women hold power, and researchers who work here are careful about that distinction. What it does mean is that a man in this arrangement has very little he can call his own, and a woman who leaves her community may also be leaving behind the land and the kin network that gave her security. Because the field a daughter inherits or a husband is given when he walks in is not an investment. Under customary tenure, it is not something a family simply sells and replaces. It has exactly one job: to grow the thing that everybody in that courtyard is going to eat tonight. The pot goes on 3 stones and a fire. White maize flour ground fine, stirred into boiling water with a wooden paddle. It gets thick fast. Thick enough that the woman cooking it has to lean her weight into the stick and work it with both hands. That is nsima, and it is on the plate at nearly every meal in this country. It comes out stiff and white-shaped into a mound, and you do not eat it with a fork. You break a piece off with your right hand, roll it into a ball, press a dent into it with your thumb, and use that to scoop up whatever is beside it. The thing beside it is called ndiwo, and that is the part that changes. Sometimes it is beans, sometimes pumpkin leaves cooked down with tomato and a spoonful of pounded groundnuts. Sometimes usipa, the small dried fish, fried until they crunch. And on a good day, chambo, a whole tilapia, grilled over coals with salt, laid down in the middle for everybody. Everybody eats from the same dishes. Water and a bowl go round first so people can wash their hands, because in a minute, those hands are going into the food. At roadside markets, you may also see field mice cleaned and roasted whole, sold on wooden skewers. They are caught during harvest and they are eaten as a snack. Look at what is on that plate. Much of it can come straight off the family's own ground. The maize from the field, the greens from the edge of it, the fish off a boat somebody in the household is related to. Which is why, in Malawi, asking whether somebody has eaten today is a real question with a specific answer. For a great many people, if there was no nsima, there was no meal. There is a word here for the thing underneath all of this, and it is not really about food. Umuntu, roughly that a person exists through other people. You see it at the exact moment the food goes down. If somebody arrives while a family is eating, there is a place for them. Nobody makes a speech about it, and nobody is asked to explain why they came. In America, feeding a guest is a decision you make. Here it is, closer to something you simply do. The plate is full tonight. Everybody eats. The fire goes down. What happens when the harvest does not last is a different story. The drums start before you see anything. Then a figure comes out of the trees wearing a carved wooden face and a body covered in straw and cloth, and it moves in a way a person does not move. This is Gule Wamkulu, the great dance. It belongs to the Chiwa, and it is performed by a society called the Nyao. The dancers are initiated men. But that is not what you are meant to be looking at. The figure in the circle is not presented as a man in a costume. It stands for a spirit, an ancestor, an animal, or a way of behaving. You do not ask who is inside it. That is the rule, and the rule is the point. Now, why does a society like this exist here, of all places? UNESCO's own description of the tradition puts it inside Chiwa matrilineal society, where a married man holds a fairly marginal position. In that setting, it says, the Nyao provided a counterweight and solidarity among men from different villages. Read that against what a man is called when he marries into his wife's village, and the whole thing fits. The women have their own initiation called Chinamwali. That one is closed too. The masks are extraordinary. Wild animals, the spirits of the dead, slave traders from the century when this region was raided for them. And newer ones. UNESCO's list of characters includes the Honda and the helicopter. The tradition did not stop taking things in. When the world produced a motorbike and a flying machine, they eventually turned up in the circle wearing masks, being danced. The characters carry meanings. Many of them exist to show a form of misbehavior performed in front of the whole village so that everybody watching learns what not to be. Go about an hour southwest of the capital. There is a range of granite hills called Chongoni, and the rock shelters in them hold one of the densest concentrations of rock art in Central Africa, 127 registered sites on the UNESCO list. UNESCO says the same Nyao masked figures that inspired that rock art can still be seen conducting rituals in villages around Chongoni at any time of year. And in some of those painted shelters, girls' initiation ceremonies are still held, mostly in secret. Not reenacted, held. Which means somewhere in this country tonight, In a cave with paintings on the wall, a ceremony is happening that was already old when the paint went on. There is one harvest a year in this country. One, the rains come around November. You plant into them, you weed through the wet months, and you cut the maize in April and May. Then that is it. Whatever came off that field has to feed the household until the next April, and there is nothing else coming. More than 80% of the population depends on farming, and most of it is rain-fed. Nobody is irrigating. The rain either arrives or it does not. The dangerous stretch has a name. The lean season. It runs roughly from October to March, and it peaks in January and February, which is the cruelest possible timing, because January and February are also when the crop in the field needs the most work. You are hungriest in the month you have to labor hardest. That is a normal year. Then look at what happens when the rain fails. In early 2024, a long dry spell hit during the growing season. It damaged around 44% of the national maize crop. In March, the president declared a state of disaster in 23 of the country's 28 districts. Maize prices in the months before that harvest ran about 230% above the 5-year average. Think about what that combination does. The thing you grow has failed, and the thing you would have to buy instead has tripled. And when a household hits that, the responses go in an order. First, the meals get smaller and the NDEWO goes. Then meals get skipped. Then, somebody sells something the family actually needs: a goat, a bicycle, a roof sheet. And then, children come out of school, because a child who is not in a classroom is a child who can work. That is not a hypothetical sequence. It is what aid agencies watched happen, and they watched it happen to millions of people. Now put that beside what we saw earlier. That plate of nsima with everybody's hands going into it. The rule that a person who turns up at mealtime eats. A family with a harvest they know will last does not need that rule in quite the same way. The sharing is not decoration on top of the hardship. It is the mechanism. When one household runs out early, the thing standing between them and nothing is the other households. Which raises the obvious question. If the field fails, and the lake is thinner than it used to be, and the maize is gone by February, where does the money come from? Start with what most people here do not have. A salary, a monthly amount that arrives on the same day every month, whether it rained or not. For many working adults in this country, income does not come in a line. It comes in bursts. The crop sells, and there is money. The crop does not sell, and there is not. Some weeks, a family brings in a reasonable amount. Other weeks, almost nothing. So look at what people actually do. A woman sets up a table by the road with tomatoes, in pyramids, and a scale. Somebody is frying maize cakes in oil beside a bus stop. A man carries passengers on the back of a bicycle for a fare on a padded seat over the rear wheel. Somebody is sewing on a treadle machine under an awning. In Lilongwe Old Town, the market is a maze. Vegetables, second-hand clothes, live chickens, and people carrying all of it through the crowd on their heads. Then, there is the money that comes in from outside. In the far south, Mount Mulanje stands almost alone out of the plain, nearly 10,000 feet of bare granite. The streams that come off it feed the small holdings and the estates below, which is why the tea is here and not somewhere else. For the communities living around it, the mountain is also the ground their ancestors are tied to. Tea bushes cover the lower slopes in clipped green rows, and people move through them all day with baskets on their backs. This country has been growing tea commercially since the 1880s. Tobacco is the other big one, and much of it is grown by smallholders on very small plots. There is money moving. The problem is what it is worth by the time it reaches a household. Food prices here have climbed hard, which means the same wage buys less every few months. At the market, the cost of a bag of maize flour, a bundle of greens, and the minibus fare all get weighed against each other in the same afternoon. And here is the number that shows you the shape of this country. Grid electricity reaches a bit over half of urban households. In rural areas, the figure is under 4%. Think about what that does to anybody trying to run something. You cannot refrigerate what you sell. You cannot charge the phone your business depends on without paying somebody who has power. You cannot study after dark without buying paraffin. Which is why one piece of technology has spread here faster than almost anything else. Mobile money. A person can send cash to a relative in another part of the country on a phone without either of them ever walking into a bank. In a country where the family network is the safety net, that is not a convenience. It is infrastructure. But it only helps if the money exists in the first place. And the farmer with a good crop still has one more problem before any of this matters. getting it to the market. The minibus is built for a small number of people, and it does not leave until it is full. You do not buy a ticket in advance. You stand by the road, it slows down. Somebody calls the destination, and you get in. Bags of maize go on the roof. Goods go wherever there is room. A conductor works his way through a wall of knees, collecting fares. This is how most people in this country move. And it is why the price of a ride matters so much. Getting to a market, a clinic, a school, or a job all cost the same thing. Cash you may not have that morning. A fare rise is not an inconvenience here. It is the difference between going and not going. The roads themselves decide a lot. Malawi is roughly 600 miles from top to bottom and narrow the whole way, which means almost everything travels along one spine. And when a road washes out in the rainy season, the effect is not that a journey takes longer. It is that the crop rots before it gets anywhere. That is the answer to the question we ended on. A farmer can grow a good crop and still lose it sitting in a pile waiting for a buyer. But there is an older road here, and it does not wash out. The lake, 350 miles of it, with mountains standing up on the far shore in Mozambique. A ship called the Ilala has been working these waters since the 1950s. She runs the length of the lake and back, calling at lakeshore towns and at two islands, Likoma and Chizumulu, that sit closer to Mozambique than to Malawi. For places with no usable road, she is the connection. Passengers, cargo, mail, building materials, people going to hospital, people going home. At some stops, there is no harbour at all, so smaller boats come out to meet her. And then there is the one that fits in a pocket. Around a fifth of the population uses the internet. That number sounds small until you consider what it was. A phone call now does the work that a journey used to do. You can find out whether the buyer is there before you load the truck. You can hear that a relative is sick without waiting for somebody to walk the news to you. And the young people holding those phones are looking at something their parents could not see from the village. In Lilongwe, there is a large domed building set behind gardens. It is the mausoleum of Hastings Kamuzu Banda. He led this country out of British rule in 1964, and then he stayed. His own party amended the constitution to make him president for life. His face went on the money. There was one legal party, and criticizing him was not something you did out loud. 30 years. Then, in 1993, the country voted in a referendum to allow other parties, and the following year, Banda stood in a free election. He was in his 90s by then. He lost. He accepted it, and he handed over. In a region where that decade did not usually end this way, an old man who had ruled for 3 decades walked out because a vote told him to. And then the other half of this story. In 2001, a 14-year-old in a village called Wimbe had to leave school. There had been a famine, and his family could not pay the fees. So he went to the small village library instead and found a physics textbook. Then he went through a scrapyard and came back with a broken bicycle, a tractor fan, some plastic pipe, and a bicycle dynamo. He built a windmill. It worked. It put electric light in his parents' house, and eventually it charged phones for the neighbors. His name is William Kamkwamba, and the story traveled a very long way beyond Wimbe. 2 Malawis. One man held power for 30 years and had to be voted out of it. One boy had no power at all and made some. That is the country the young are inheriting. In the cities, there are phone shops, internet cafes, classrooms, and people studying things their parents had no access to. But leaving the village costs a household a pair of hands. And there is one thing that can undo all of it in a single season. Southern Malawi in a good year is green to the horizon. Hills covered in vegetation, streams running off the maize standing in every direction. March 2023. A storm called Freddy came back for a second pass at southern Africa. It had already been alive for over a month, and it holds the record as the longest-lasting tropical cyclone ever recorded. It sat over southern Malawi, and it rained for more than a day without stopping. And then the hills started to move. In Blantyre, the country's commercial city, entire slopes came down onto the neighborhoods built along them. Mudwater trees houses. Over 600 people were killed, most of them in and around that one city. Hundreds more were never found. More than 600,000 people were displaced. Around 230 schools stopped being schools and became camps. And it hit while the country was in the middle of its worst cholera outbreak on record. Here is the question that decides whether it happens again. Why did the hillsides come down? Rain alone does not do that to a slope with trees on it. Roots hold soil. Take the trees off, and the same rain runs straight down the hill, carrying everything with it. So why were the trees gone? Go back to that number from earlier. Under 4% of rural households have grid electricity. People still have to cook every day, 3 times a day for a very large population. And when there is no power and no gas, the fuel is charcoal, and charcoal is made from trees. That is the chain. No electricity, so charcoal. Charcoal, so the hillsides get cut. Bare hillsides, so a heavy rain becomes a landslide. The statistic in the earlier chapter was not really about refrigerators. It was about this. And the timing is the other cruelty. Freddie was 2023. The very next year, the problem reversed itself completely, and the dry spell wrecked the maize crop. Flood, then drought in consecutive seasons in the same fields. Since 1980, this country has recorded more than 50 disasters connected to weather. More than 25 of them fell in the last decade alone. Which means a household here is not recovering from one bad year. It is being hit again before the last one has been paid off. Half the population lives below the poverty line, and most of those people are rural. This is where the film has arrived. The catch is a fraction of what it was. The harvest is one roll of the dice a year. There is no salary, no grid, and the road washes out. And every few seasons, the weather takes another swing at it. By any measurement a person would use from outside, this is a country you leave. So why does almost everybody stay? Ask that question here, and you will not get a speech about loving your country. You will get something much more specific. Start with what leaving actually costs. In the communities we looked at earlier, a field is not an asset a person owns and can sell up on the way out. It is held through a lineage and allocated through a family. Nobody is stopping a person from going. But going does not turn that field into money. It just means somebody else farms it. Then there is who is standing on it. A household here is not 4 people. It is 15. Grandmothers, aunts, cousins, the children of relatives working somewhere else. Leaving is not a personal decision. It removes a pair of hands from a system that needs every pair of hands it has. And people do leave. Young people go to Lilongwe and Blantyre for school and for work, and some go much further than that. But watch what happens after they go. The money comes back. On a phone, through mobile money, from a city to a village, month after month. The visits happen. The obligation does not switch off because of distance. This is where the word from earlier does its real work. Umuntu. A person exists through other people. In a country with a functioning welfare state, that is a nice sentiment. Here it is, the actual mechanism. There is no unemployment insurance underneath a household when the maze fails. There are other households, and that is the thing the outside measurements cannot see. You can count how much a family earns, how many of them have electricity, how many meals they eat in the lean season, and every one of those numbers will tell you this is one of the poorest countries on the planet. All of that is true, and none of it should be softened. But those numbers do not have a column for how many people would take you in. The warmth people talk about here is not the absence of hardship. Nobody is warm because life is easy. It is what people built between each other, because the hardship is real, and because there has never been anything else standing underneath them. That is the answer to the question this film started with. When the rain decides whether your family eats and the land will not hold your future for you, what do you hold on to instead? Each other. Not as a sentiment, as a system. Go back to the start of this. Boats coming in at dawn, and a market that exists on a beach for 2 hours a day. A ring of houses around a swept courtyard, and a man living in a village where his own children belong to somebody else's line. A pot of white maize stirred with both hands, and a plate that anybody who walks in gets to eat from. A figure in a wooden mask that nobody is allowed to name. One harvest a year and a lean season that peaks in the month, the fields need the most work. A woman selling tomatoes by the road because there is no such thing as payday. A minibus that leaves when it is full, and a ship that has been crossing that lake since before most of the passengers were born. An old man who ruled for 30 years and lost an election. A 14-year-old who could not pay school fees and built a windmill out of a scrapyard. And a hillside that came down on a city after people had spent years cutting trees for charcoal. None of that is a country you would design. It is a country that has been improvised season by season by about 21 million people who mostly do not have a safety net, an electricity line, or a guaranteed harvest, and who have, instead, each other. That is what the name is really pointing to. The warm heart of Africa. Not because it is easy here, because of what people had to build when nothing else was going to hold them up.